Welcome to Hyde Talk. I'm your host, Jen Lobozzo. Hyde Talk is a podcast focused on character, leadership, education, and parenting. Today's guest is alumni parent Tom Moore. Tom, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm sure you are. Well, in true Hyde fashion, we are just going to dive into your story and journey as a father, a CEO of a major airline, and now a current board member. So let's start with your first child. How did you and your family choose Hyde?
Well, we have 4 kids, and our oldest was, I wouldn't say he was spinning out of control, but there were emotional issues, there were substance issues, and we were fearful of him going off to college and not being able to make good decisions. So we were looking for an alternative. So he has a great basis of education in Catholic school, but what really aligned with us was the family education component at Hyde. So we kind of realized it that even though we thought we were with it parents, that we needed help too.
And then what led, after your first son's journey here, what led the subsequent 3 children to come to Hyde?
All right, child number 2, great athlete, and a good kid, but what he took a lot of risk on inside the athletic courts, but maybe not so much in the classroom or with his friends. And so, there was this point that what was good for the first one could be good for the second one. And then child 3, our kind of Sherman Tank kind of kid, really good academically. And even in a high profile Catholic school, he wasn't challenged. And so he wanted to come to Hyde maybe a year earlier than I was ready to let him go. Ultimately, I think the school looked at him and really challenged his leadership. There was a bit of a gap until our princess came along. Mary was also at this point at the school and teaching English, so we gave her a pass on her freshman year at Hyde. But I think what we saw with Carolyn, good academically, she didn't quite have her voice. And so for 3 years, I think Hyde really challenged her to be able to speak and to have confidence in her voice.
And for you as a parent, as a father, how did you feel your leadership was challenged or role in the family in general?
Well, I quickly realized that some of the unproductive attitudes of my kids, they bore what I was modeling for them, and some of the things I thought that would be productive for them, like really working hard, coaching. I think it turned off my kids. They didn't like to see me work 10 hours, then come home and mow the grass. I mean, I don't want that life. So I think I really had to learn, in many ways, the hard way, how to become a motivator, inspire my kids. But at the same time, I had to change my authenticity. There was none at that point. I was just a good executive or a good dad or a good son, but who knew who Tom Moore was?
And was there any one moment, whether it was through the family program, when you were here through family learning centers or family weekends, when you were specifically challenged or had an eye-opening moment where you just gained more insight on those changes in yourself that you're speaking about?
Well, maybe my most embarrassing moment was also my greatest moment. We had a small retreat in the Northern Virginia chapter, and we were just a number of veterans, 5 or 6 of us were sitting around chit-chatting, and one of the women asked me if, you ought to give her husband a call. He really wants to get to know you more. And I said, well, he's too intense for me. And when those words came out of my mouth, I realized what an ass I was. I got chewed up by the group. We, as a coincidence, were supposed to be coming up to Hyde the following week, and the first thing I did was I found the toughest and most iconic name on campus, Paul Hurd, and said, "This is what I've done." And it really was a reflection that when somebody got close, when there was something intimate or vulnerable coming at me, I just pushed back, and I pushed back hard. That was embarrassing, but you know what? That was a vehicle for growth for me.
And how do you think you've seen that growth now that your children are far out of Hyde? They themselves are parents and have their own families. What's your role as a grandfather now? Where's that vulnerability coming into play?
Well, I think what Hyde did for me with the grandchildren was not to get in the way. Um, say on the peripheral and not have all the answers. As a parent, I had all the answers for the kids until they became teenagers, and then there was resistance on both fronts, from them to me and me to them. So I think when I look at how my kids treat their kids, it's very different than I think how Mary and I modeled or battled. We had all the answers for the kids. My way or the highway kind of was my approach. My kids co-parent, and I don't know that Mary and I were very effective at that until we really came to Hyde.
Speak more about that specific part of you and Mary. Where were the two of you prior to coming to Hyde, and then where do you see your relationship now?
Well, I do think I think the term is triangulation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Sure.
But it's like Mary and I could focus on one of the kids, but we never really had that. Our relationship between each other, I think, wasn't vigorous. And I think, I look at the metaphor for how we parented is like, or how our relationship was, we were two people on fast speedboats going side by side, but we weren't on the same boat. And I think Hyde made us look at that relationship. And I think, when we came to Hyde, we were looking at our parenting, how can we improve our parenting? As we got through child number 3 and 4, Mary and I started to look at each other, and my kids would, be in a seminar and say, "Hey, what about me?" He said, "No, we're just dealing with each other right now."
Oh, I love that. And where do you think, going back to your children, who are 3 of the boys are fathers, and what seeds do you think were planted at Hyde that you think have really helped them be the parents that they are today to their children?
Well, I think the biggest thing is communication and talking versus having a strong, just expressing opinions. I think there's a much better effort between the 3 boys and my 3 daughter-in-laws in terms of how they talk to each other and how they talk with their kids. They're trying to rationalize with a 3-year-old. I could never imagine trying to do that.
It's not easy. I will tell you that. And do you still do family check-ins?
Informally, I think we probably haven't had one for like two years, maybe.
Ooh.
Sorry. But we've had some really good ones and I think the daughter-in-laws have come to really enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the boys feel like they're going to get picked on. So there's some reluctance to that.
Mm-hmm. Listen, you got to let go of the ego a little bit.
But the last one we had, my daughter-in-law called it. So that was a very big step for her and for our family.
Yeah, your son chose a good woman.
Yes, all 3 of them did.
Yeah, truly. And so now let's shift gears a little bit. I would love to hear about just your role as a CEO and how that has played into your leadership and now your current leadership as a board member for Hyde.
Okay, so I think one of the stories I had was when I was like a VP at the airline. I told our CEO at the time, I want to become president, And he looked at me and he said, "You'll become a president when you start acting like a president." And I walked away kind of saying, "Whoa, what does that mean?" And then I think when I came to Hyde, then opened my eyes that really all I was a manager, a good executive manager. And what I needed to become was a leader. And so to me, the key for my leadership has been allowing others to succeed and fail and to become more authentic. Many of the skills that I had as a manager and executive, I brought home. Ooh, didn't work.
How so?
Because I was a problem solver, and I didn't need the kids to help me solve their problems. In a sense, I needed to put more of it onto their plate, their lives, and not offer them the solutions. Once I kind of came upon this approach, I actually brought it back into the office, and I think that made me a better executive and leader at the airline.
Did you become president?
I did.
Yeah. So then you started to act like a president.
Apparently, I had to act like it first, though.
Yeah, act your way into feeling.
Yes.
That leadership versus management concept, I think that's something that I think a lot about in terms of working particularly with our seniors and postgraduates, that it's a hard balance. How do you, first of all, what does leadership look like? And then what does management look like? And both are important, and yet where does the weight of your foot want to be? But I like what you said in terms of maybe asking questions instead of trying to be the problem solver a lot.
Yeah, I think what I learned to do was test the process and not necessarily make the decision.
And now, where does some of those values fit in for you as a board member?
Well, I think the board is blessed to have a number of great backgrounds, professional backgrounds, attitudes. It's half alumni and half parents of children. And, I think my approach to Hyde has been to be kind of a truth seeker. Now, some on the board might call me a shit stirrer, but I do look to try to challenge. But also, I think the management would probably, I hope, agree with that. I do support the management. I'm blessed to what Hyde did for me and my family, and so my participation on the board has been to say thank you and offer support back to keep this brand and this company and this school going.
Yeah, and you're paying it forward in a very big way, I would say.
Thank you.
And now, from a board member standpoint, firstly, let's talk about maybe what are some challenges are we facing, is Hyde facing as a boarding school? And then conversely, what are some visions and future goals that we can really, reach for that brass ring?
Well, I think small colleges, boarding schools, there's a lot of failure going on right now. The demographics of how many kids there are is reduced, and I think for a school to succeed, whether it's a high school or a boarding school or a college, you have to be relevant to the customer. And so Hyde's challenge is to continuously look at who the target customer is and make sure we're relevant and we're able to communicate why Hyde is important and why we're different than the competition.
Before we talk about future goals and vision, I want to talk about, well, why would or do you think a family really land here? How can we make ourselves relevant to those families who maybe don't know that they quite need that yet? They want the quick fix, but, maybe how could we really reach those families who definitely need it but aren't quite sure?
I think we are putting the resources in place. Both the management and the board are focused on, how do we, who is our target customer and how do we reach them, whether it's through social media or podcasts. And we put a lot of resources into website development, and we strengthened our management team. Hyde is blessed in a sense that we have a very good endowment. Relative to our peers, having a $25 million endowment is a very important element of our sustainability. We can weather, the downturns and win in the upturns when you have the kind of cash balance we have. And I think that's been important. We've also had a number of great alumni and parents make big financial commitments to this school, to provide the resources. The school is positioned for success, and now it's just a matter of, execution on the marketing side.
Mm-hmm. And that's from a very business standpoint. Being ingrained in the day-to-day as a faculty member, there's a real culture in which it's only moved in such a positive direction, especially since the pandemic. And so I just think that does align with some of the more positive aspects you're speaking about as a board member.
I do think the pandemic, was a gut, kick in the gut, not just to Hyde, but all academic institutions. I read the other day there's like 500 colleges have closed in this country over the last decade. And part of it is there just aren't as many kids going to college, but you have to make yourself relevant to stand out in a very fragmented marketplace. And that's what Hyde, the challenge for Hyde is how do you stand out? And I think we have we have a good management team in place to be able to deliver.
Absolutely. And so now let's pivot to future goals and visions for us as Hyde.
Well, Malcolm and Laura have spawned off, another business, so to speak, of trying to bring Hyde to other people. So we have a modular learning program for public schools that would help a public school be able to improve the culture and reduce maybe the stress or help those kids that are falling through the cracks right now in a public school setting. So I think it's being able to monetize the brand that we have that we call Hyde, but it is, what have we learned and how can we apply this to a different population outside of the private education.
And there's such a need in education, both public and private and charter, where the social emotional component is gaining a lot of traction. And that's been a huge foundation from the family program and through our discovery process. Do you think that what we're able to do in a boarding school setting can be relevant in a public or charter school?
Well, I think it's a hard sell to bring a public school superintendent onto a private school campus and show them what we're doing. But we have schools that are doing it in a public school setting, and I think that's a better vehicle to help them recognize what they can do with their school. Schools are struggling, kids are struggling, families are struggling. Some of it is the pandemic, and some of it is, culturally, and everybody recognizes, but there isn't an agreement as to, what the fix is. And I think Hyde has a very novel solution out there. But doing Hyde is not necessarily easy, and a lot of people are looking for an easy solution. And the more you make it just a poster on the wall, the less it becomes effective.
Right. Yeah, it's more than a poster.
Yeah.
It's a living, breathing culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I would love to shift now to talking about you personally again, back to, what would you love for your legacy to be? And you can break it up into, here as Tom Moore, member of the board and alumni parent of 4 children who graduated from Hyde, and then you as a man and a father and a grandfather.
Well, I think I've been blessed. I have a great family, a great wife, And I think that really, to me, that's my legacy, is that, what I have brought to the world is reflected in the great family I have. I'm at a point in my life where I'm wanting to give back. So I've done the high achievement element, I've done the struggles, all that. So now it's a matter of how can I help my community? And, for a long time, I've been a facilitator at Hyde, and I've worked with a lot of men, the hard drivers, trying to convince them that they got to engage. If you want your kid to engage, and you got to engage. Now I've kind of taken that and I do it with businesses. So startups, ongoing businesses here in Maine. I do a lot of mentoring, and many of my skills from mentoring businesses actually come from my practice here at Hyde. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I enjoy the grandkids, but kind of glad when they pack up and leave.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of privacy, a little bit of quiet. But I do enjoy helping other businesses because I think I have a shared experience that can, I hope, make more jobs, make more wealth, make people look at themselves and what it takes to really start a business.
Hearing that for you, I think is just such a good fit as being a coach for small businesses and helping them grow and a mentorship. I just think we have a long-standing relationship. It goes back 13 years, and I'll never forget. It's always a bug in my ear as I move along and grow as a mom or here at Hyde as a faculty member. But you told me don't play it small, and I think we were just facilitators at the time. And I get challenges in the various activities we do, but that one has always stuck out. Or I think you said you're playing it too small. And the competitive side of me was, well, what does this guy mean? What does that really mean? So I have truly appreciated your relationship and the role that you've played in my life and in the past many
Well, it's
years.
been fun. You've been a great teacher to my daughter, mentor, and now you're a friend. Mm-hmm. And it's been fun watching your family grow. And I love Jonathan.
Oh, me too. Yeah. I'm glad you do too. Yeah, no, I couldn't do this without him.
Well, I think my experience at Hyde is what is it if you don't like what's coming at you, throw the shoe back or try it on first.
If the shoe fits, wear it.
Okay.
If not, throw it away. But try it on first. You have to walk around in it.
I think my role, and maybe I'm a little arrogant in a sense, but I do like to provide shoes to people. Mm-hmm. Help them. So it's not my job to fix someone's problem, but I do feel if you're willing to listen and learn, then I'm going to put my best into helping you and giving you some of my experiences. And I think that's what all good coaches should do. Mm. But if someone doesn't want to listen to me, I finally have figured out I need to quit talking to them.
Mm. Or it's okay.
It's okay. It's not the right time for you to listen to me. That's fine. I've gotten some cold shoulders at the end of seminars.
Yeah, but you're planting seeds.
I hope so.
Yeah, and one day they shall bloom.
It used to be a time when I would feel like I owned somebody else's problem, and so I'd want to listen to me. I've got the answer. Metaphorically, I'd run across the room, grab them by what do you call these things?
The collar.
The collar.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I've got it. I came to appreciate that no one was listening when I got that emotionally invested in somebody else's problem.
Right.
I need to sit back. I need to make sure my message is accepted. And then I need to let go of it because sometimes I would say, I'm really worried, after the seminar, I'm really worried about George.
Right.
And it's like, now I think I finally figured out it's not my problem.
Yeah. As Paul Hurd, who you mentioned earlier, you've unburdened yourself with whomever, and now it's their job to pick it up and deal with it.
Took me a while to figure that one out.
Yeah, I'm still working on it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for sharing your insights, your experience, being vulnerable, and sharing your many children with us. And I look forward to continuing our relationship.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. You have been watching Hyde Talk, and I'm your host, Jen Lobozzo. Be sure to check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms and viewing on social media. Thank you, and see you next time.